Meredith with ExtremeTerrain.com, and today we are checking out the AFE Control 1.875-inch front leveling kit, fitting all 2022 and newer Toyota Tundras without the ABS and load leveling air system, and excluding the TRD Pro models. Now, if you've noticed that nose down rake in your Tundra's hood and want a little bit of height to correct it without doing too much to your suspension, this is going to be a great choice for you. Now, this will add just a touch of height to the front compared to other larger leveling kits, lifting up the nose just enough to create more of that defined stance that you may be looking for without digging too deep into your suspension or affecting your very comfortable factory style ride quality. It's also a very affordable approach to suspension if you want a quick and easy fix when it comes to the look of your truck. Now, the main reason for the rake in your hood is all that weight on your truck is usually in the front, so when you load up the bed or you're towing, it's going to even it out a bit when the rear suspension is being pulled down. But if you're not doing that a lot, it can sometimes look silly. However, this will be one of the smallest options in the category, which is going to keep that additional height to a minimum, making it easy still to get in and out of your truck on a daily basis without raising it too much where you would get that opposite effect. Now, while this kit will offer a better look for your truck, it's also going to be functional, allowing more ground clearance in the front so you can clear hazards better, even if you're not going off-road. It's also going to let you very comfortably clear a 33-inch tire without any trimming or modifications needed for your setup. The kit will consist of these two spacers here, made of a CNC Machine 6061 billet aluminum, which is just a fancy way of saying that the aluminum here is tough and able to withstand the tough pressures of your suspension, while also cut to a factory spec for a solid fit. Now, on top, as you can see, this will have a red anodized finish, protecting the aluminum underneath from corrosion over time, and will look pretty cool inside the wheel well. Now, I do want to note that the spacer here is physically going to measure to 1.5 inches, but with the spring compression and suspension geometry, it is going to create that 1.875-inch lift in the front. Now, this will also be a straightforward bolt-on mod that's not going to require modification, and it will come with all of the heavy-duty hardware required for the install. Now, this entire setup here is going to cost about $150, which will put this at one of your most affordable options in the category for a leveling kit. Now, like I said though, this is going to be a quick and easy fix, just including these spacers and being on the smaller side of the spectrum, that's going to help you save a bit in price. Now, once you start jumping up inside and start needing additional components to accommodate for that added height, the price is going to jump. So if you just want to keep this job simple and affordable to get some better function and a better look for your Tundra, this is a great option. Install for this is going to be a 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. It'll probably take about 3 hours to get the job done with the right tools, experience, and setup. Now, at this point, we can head over to our shop, check out a detailed breakdown on how you can get these onto your Tundra, whether you are tackling this job yourself or you're just curious about the install. So that is going to wrap it up for my review. Let's go ahead and jump into it.
Tools required for this install include impact or air guns, a hammer, bungee cord, an extension, 12, 19, and 22 millimeter swivel sockets, 14 and 19 millimeter sockets, a flathead screwdriver, 12, 14, and 16 millimeter ratcheting wrenches, a 7/8 wrench, and a pry bar. What's up, guys? Today we're installing a leveling kit on our Tundra, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is unbolt all of our brake line brackets. We've got 4 12 millimeter bolts. We've got one here, one here, one here, and one up here. Just grab a 12 millimeter socket and pull those out. And then just pop the brake line bracket out of the way. And I'm just going to throw our bolt back in a couple threads so we don't lose it. And then for the one back here, I'm just going to grab a 12 millimeter ratcheting wrench. Now next we can come to our sway bar end link. We've got a 19mm bolt and a 19mm nut. We're gonna remove both of those and then use a pry bar to pry the lower part of our end link off of that stud, and then we can slide it out of our sway bar. And now just get a pry bar right up in here and just pry that off. And do that same thing on the other side. Now we can go up to the top of our strut and take a 14mm ratcheting wrench to remove all of our nuts. I'm gonna leave 1 or 2 on the front studs here, just a couple threads on so it doesn't fall once we lower down our lower control arm. So I'm just gonna start in the back here. Once you get it loosened up, you can just slide it off by hand. And just leave those on a couple threads. Next, we're gonna disconnect our upper control arm from the knuckle. Now we have this pin in here that we need to pull out, and then we'll take a 19mm swivel socket to get our nut off. We're gonna loosen it up just to where it's holding on by a couple threads, and then we're just gonna give it a couple smacks with a hammer to get that ball joint to pop free, and then we can fully remove this nut. Now I'm gonna take a flathead screwdriver. There's a little hook that goes into one of these notches on the other side. So I'll show you that once I pop that off. But you can just get a little flathead in there to pry it out. So that's the hook there. That's just gonna hook into one of these. So just get a flathead in there and pry that backward. And then grab your 19mm socket and just loosen this up for now. And then take a hammer and just hit this flat spot until that pops free. And now before I completely remove that nut, I'm gonna take a bungee cord to put around the knuckle here just to hold it in place to make sure that our CV axle doesn't pop out. So just go ahead and find a hole. Pop that bungee cord in so it holds. And then you can pull down on your upper control arm and spin off your nut. And then separate that upper control arm from your knuckle. Next, we can remove our lower strut bolt. Now you're gonna need a 22mm socket and wrench for this. If you don't have a 22mm wrench, since they're not as common, a 7/8 will get the job done. So now we can go back up top and remove our last 2 nuts to get our strut out of here. Now we should be all right to get it out around this bungee cord. We'll give it our best shot, but if not, we'll just move this behind the strut, and we have a hole back here next to our inner tie rod that we can clip that onto. So now I went ahead and put that back into our bottom mount. And then I'm just gonna push up on the upper control arm. Slide our strut out. Get our bungee cord under the spring here. And then get it out of our lower mount. If you have the bungee cord in front of the strut here, just make sure that when you pull it out of that bottom mount, you got a good grip on it. Otherwise, it could pull the bottom in and shoot the top down towards you. So now with our factory struts removed, we can install our spacer on top. You're gonna be reusing the factory nuts from the top of your strut to fasten this down to the strut. There's only one way this can go on because our stud spacing isn't exactly even. So slide that on and then grab those nuts and thread them onto the studs. You can use a 14mm socket in there if you need a little more access. And then take your 14mm socket and tighten those down. Now with that spacer installed, now our two mounting holes for the front are off center. So what we're gonna have to do is go over to the spring compressor. We're gonna have to rotate our strut so that this front stud here lines up with our lower shock mount. So now we're over here at the spring compressor. Now what we're gonna do here is we're gonna reference our bottom mount here. We want this flat side to be facing us, and then we're gonna be lining that up to the stud that's to the left of our logo on our spacer here. So I've got my arms underneath the bottom perch, and then I've got the top on the spring. We're gonna compress this until we have enough tension on the spring where we can rotate this top hat, and we're just gonna be lining up that stud with the bottom. Now you wanna make sure that you're getting this as close as you possibly can, because since we have bolts that are gonna be going down through the top of our strut tower into this spacer, we don't have a ton of room for error like we would if we had studs up here. So once you get it all safely set up, go ahead and start cranking down. And then now I can rotate that top hat. So I'm just gonna rotate it until that stud's perfectly in line with our bottom mount. And that looks pretty spot on right there. So then you can go ahead and release tension. You wanna make sure that once you have no tension on here, it's still lined up like that, because you might have to make a little bit of an adjustment. So now I've got no tension on my spring, and I'm just gonna double check here. And that looks pretty spot on. So do the same thing for your other strut, and then we'll get these on the truck. So now we can get our strut into place. Remember, this logo on our spacer is facing right of our center stud here. So I'm gonna put this over our bungee cord, slide it into the lower mount, lift up on our upper control arm, slide that through. And then you're gonna have to kind of pull down on the knuckle here to get this to clear. And then once you have that center stud under the lip here, you can just take a rubber mallet and smack it into place. And now we get to the fun part of getting all of our bolts threaded into our spacer. We've got bolts included in the kit with a lock washer and flat washer. Now if you need to, just to get the front one started, you can take the flat washer and lock washer off so that you have a little more bolt to work with, and then get your other three in, pull that one back out, and throw your hardware back on. Now I've got a pole jack under the lower control arm. If you're doing this on the ground, just grab a jack, and that way you can raise this up to get that spacer closer to the holes. And then just line up your holes and thread in your bolts. Now if you need to, you can take a pry bar in between the lower strut mount and the strut to rotate the strut a little bit to get your other holes lined up. Next, we can reinstall our lower strut bolt. You might need to maneuver your lower control arm around a little bit to get that hole to line up. You can use a 3/8 extension to stick in the hole and then pry back and forth to get it centered up. And then once you have that through, you can take a hammer to tap it the rest of the way. And then grab your washer and nut and thread onto the other side of that bolt. And then grab your 22mm socket and wrench, or your 7/8 wrench if you use that, and tighten that down. And now grab a 16mm ratcheting wrench. We're gonna go up top and tighten down our 4 bolts. So now we need to pry our upper control arm downward to reconnect that to our knuckle here. I've got a couple pry bars. I've got one I'm kind of using as a safety pry bar in case this first one slips. And then just get your upper control arm ball joint into your knuckle. And then start prying down. And then once you have that in place, thread your nut on. And then you pop your pry bars out. And then grab your 19mm socket and tighten down that nut. And now you just want to look to see if your hole's lining up. If it's not, you always want to tighten, never loosen this to get it to line up. And now our hole's lined up there. So now you can grab your clip, make sure that this hooked side hooks into one of the slots in our castle nut. And just push it until it clicks. Just give it a nice push, make sure it's locked in there. And then once we have that in place, we can go ahead and remove our bungee cord. So now we're gonna reattach all of our brake line brackets, tighten down all those bolts, and then you're gonna repeat the entire process on the other side, and then we can get to our sway bar end links. Now, if you get one in before you have the other side done, it's gonna make it a real pain to get that in. So we'll do those first, then we might have to loosen up these brackets to drop the sway bar down a little to give us a little bit more maneuverability. And then I'm gonna start up top with that 12mm ratcheting wrench, tighten that one down. And then I'll switch to my 12mm swivel socket to tighten the rest. So now we can get our end link into place. I'm gonna put the stud through our sway bar first. Just gonna get our nut on a thread for now. And then you're just gonna have to kind of pull down on the sway bar to slide that over that post. And then thread in your bolt. And then take your 19mm socket and tighten both of those down. And then do that same thing on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the AFE Control 1.875-inch front leveling kit for your 2022 and newer Tundra without ABS system and load leveling air system and excluding TRD Pro. Thank you for watching, and for all things Tundra, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.